Alright, we're going to do a shot breakdown of one of the shots from the Aurelia title sequence that we've created, and this is a favourite shot actually. This is one that I'm really pleased with. So it's the sketchy blueprinty style shot. So to give a bit of context, this is like Act 2 of the title sequence, which is the apply section, so everything's taken on a design sensibility of grids and planning and blueprinty type aesthetics. So what I'm going to do is break down this section of one shot, which is the final shot just before it goes into the shear section. So I'll just play it. And then as it blooms in, that's the transition into shear. So it's this section of this weird diagram and some motion in there, but it's largely frame by frame. So let's jump into that. So here we are. I'm going to knock this down to, yeah, it's already done like lowest res because it's going to take me a million years to hack it on this laptop. But it's about, if this is where it starts to bloom, then it's about 5 seconds worth of footage, all in all. So let's break it down right from the beginning. So the first thing we've got in there, if I jump through to the very basic thing, is a series of, I think it's 55 frames all in all, but some of them have been cropped just because the shot didn't need to be that long. So this is actually just the paper background. So what I've done here is take a number of different paper textures. Some came from like Unsplash, some I made myself, colour corrected them all in the same way. So you can see just hue, saturation, brightness, contrast on there, and then just made them sort of flick over. And what I found was actually for that grungy blueprint aesthetic, I actually found concrete textures work well, because that's, I mean, it's surprising because that's paper, but concrete textures work really well. So for a sort of fold in the parchment, you can see here, this is actually the seam between two massive concrete bricks on a big concrete wall. So yeah, basically it's single frames of these paper textures, and you know, there aren't 70 different paper textures on there. It's actually just like the same 6 or 7, but I've flipped some over, and then it's so random in its sequence that it seems like it's changing every time. And then if we jump out to the next comp up, so what I've done here is overlaid the actual drawings themselves, and I'll get into how I made those drawings. But the look I was going for was that almost like a flip book, where you've got a single drawing on a single sheet of paper, but if you view enough of those sheets of paper in succession, they create a finished thing. And that's how I wanted to convey this idea of application. So you plan a shot, and this would never happen in real VFX, but this shot depicts you planning it frame for frame on paper, just using those icons and symbols of planning and application, and how do we prepare something to that we're going to go and make. So we sketch it out. So what you can see is, if I just block I'll just solo the grid. Oh, it's all part of the same image. I can't do that. Anyway, the idea is that with the paper changing background, it looks like a new sheet of paper every time. And that's the sort of tone I was going for. So it's like hundreds of different layerings of different papers, and they've all got different frames on. So let's look at the sketches, and I'll quickly open up the project that I used for that. basically what I did was I created an animation in Photoshop using the frame by frame timeline, and this is using like a pencil texture, and I'll just quickly throw a layer on the bottom here to make it stand out a bit more. So what there is a grid which I designed in Illustrator. So that's just squares of different sizes. I did some dots, I did some big crosses and small crosses, and that's something that I got from Ash Thorpe's design process. He's a big UI and user interface and everything to do with, like, you know, computer screens and holographic interfaces and things. He's done a lot of work in Hollywood, and it's all to do with creating, you know, sci-fi dashboards and stuff like that. So he makes a lot of these grid type things. And then we've got these axes which sort of act as measuring, you know, for measuring purposes. And I didn't worry too much about giving everything, you know, a really clear narrative. It's more about, again, that visual symbology of what does this convey. So it doesn't really need to make sense, as long as it looks the part. So what I thought would be good, and I toyed with this idea in a lot of different ways, is what if the shot was a sort of a two-camera view, a top-down camera and a horizontal camera of the same reference point. So you can see this circle here is the top down and it's a cube, and if I just play it through, the axes that are marked on, sorry, this ring here that goes around is the path that this camera follows, and I've just tried to use After Effects' you know, standard camera model to depict that. So it's the field of view and then just a box, so it's on this axis, and then here in the corner we've got what the camera is seeing, and this took forever to do. This shot alone took me all day. So this is actually realistic, so where the camera is at this point is what this little viewfinder would see. And if I keep playing that, or, you know, choose different ones, no matter where the camera is, each frame, it's an accurate representation of what that cube looks like. And then also what I've done is create this sort of acceleration curve, and that's literally just the curve made with a path, and in After Effects I animated a little sort of node to just travel up it. So to add the idea of, you know, roughness and sketching and planning out, I would just draw little ticks and marks, and I've sort of marked the camera's position on the axes, and I've just done it at random across this. So some of them I've just drawn tangents along, some of them I've given it like a label, but basically what I did was just export all that out as a PNG or a series of PNGs, and then put that into a After Effects comp that I could then layer over. So when you play it in After Effects, it retains that motion that was created in Photoshop. Now the reason I chose Photoshop is because I didn't feel like I'd be able to get the texture that I wanted to. I've never really experimented with the After Effects brushes, and I should have at least tested it, but I just knew with Photoshop I'd be able to just jump in and do it. Now I'm not avoiding learning stuff because I've never had to animate on Photoshop before, so it did involve me having to work out how to do frame by frame, and I think the default, or at least it was for me, timeline is the video timeline. So I was sat there thinking, I know we can do this, but how do you actually get to a point of doing it? Because I think the video timeline is like based on, I haven't probably worked it out, but it puts every layer as its own track, as if it was a video editor. You know, unlike an NLE, like you layer your tracks on top of each other, your footage on top of each other, it takes every single layer and puts it into its own track. You have to toggle from video to frame animation to get it so that it's frame by frame rather than working its way up in terms of layers. So what else have we got in here? I think this is just color correction, this adjustment layer. Yeah. So let's jump out. That's with all the animation there done. essentially just 55 different drawings exported as a PNG and then put over this paper background. Now, to add that sense of this is a load of sheets of paper that we're really looking at, jump back out, what I've done is, and I really like how this turned out, I got pictures of pencil shavings and pencil dust and crumbs, and eraser rub out stuff, and just sort of laid them over, and I've put like a light drop shadow on where necessary. So they're on for single frames, and I think it just brings something really nice to it because it gives it some depth and surface, which I think is really good. Also, I don't think it is on this one. So what I did was I used a mixture of it's the loop out effect expression, sorry. So the loop out expression mixed with some very, very subtle keyframe rotations, literally within a degree. So every 2 frames, I'll talk about that as well, or every 3 frames, it moves by a fraction of a degree, or rotates around by a fraction of a degree. Now, I've done it on 3s rather than on 1s in terms of my animation, because I wanted that choppy, I'm looking at a flipbook effect. I didn't want it to be 24 frames a second, 5 seconds of like smooth, seamless pencil drawings. I wanted it to be, you're looking at one sheet of paper, now you're looking at a new sheet of paper, now you're looking at a new sheet of paper, and I thought the best way to do that would be to reduce the frame rate, and I think it's worked really well. So jumping out again, what's this null for? I think this is just a slow scale. Yeah, it is. I always find, very subtle camera motion adds a lot. So that brings us back to the top level. This adjustment layer is just tints. I've added a bit of a yellow 4-color gradient to just give a bit more sort of paper texture and paper tone. Brightness, contrast, curves, all that's there. The caption is on there, and Adobe Dimensions, and then surface level is the quick aberration effect that I found on just a free YouTube video that's been pivotal to this entire project, which works really well. And then the camera lens blur. So all of these shots, to some degree, have aberration put on there as well as camera lens blur, and I think that just helps integrate things into the realism of these sort of intro sequences. So you get intro sequences that are sometimes more graphic and clearly not based in any reality, and sometimes they do try and sort of recreate reality. So look at something like Westworld. They do a lot of work in that title sequence to recreate realistic physical camera effects and blur and dust and particles and things, and that's what I've tried to do here. So this was actually a last minute decision, the invert colour thing, and that was just to give it a bit more feel and emotion, because there's a piano tone or a bass note that strikes at the point of where it changes over, and I just thought it worked really well. And to look, there's no real meaning behind it, but it just looks good to have this sort of symmetry, and it also ties us up nicely for the transition into the shear section, which is all dark anyway. So yeah, that's the shot. That's how I did it. Literally just drawing 55 pictures of a sketch over and over again, and then just layering it on some paper, putting some rotation on that, making sure the frame rate was a certain level, slow zoom in, aberration, camera blur, and that's it.